Hi friends, welcome to Whisper and Learn channel, where you practice English and learn important life lessons. Every video has a story to help you improve your listening skills. These stories are simple, clear, and perfect for beginners. Learning English doesn't have to be hard. With stories, it's fun and easy. Are you ready to listen, learn, and grow? Let's start the story together now.
Amber was an 18-year-old girl. She had just finished high school. She lived in a small town with her family. Amber dreamed of going to college, but her family did not have much money. She decided to get a job to help pay for her studies. Amber was excited and nervous. She had never worked before. She didn't know what to expect. She looked for job openings in her town. After a few days, she found one. It was at a local bakery called Sweet Treats. The bakery was small but very popular. The owner, Mrs. Carter, was a kind but strict woman. She interviewed Amber. "Why do you want this job?" Mrs. Carter asked. Amber smiled. "I want to save money for college. I also love baking, and I want to learn more." Mrs. Carter liked Amber's answer. "You can start tomorrow," she said. Amber was very happy. She ran home to tell her family. Her mother hugged her. "I'm so proud of you," she said. The next morning, Amber arrived at the bakery. She wore a clean apron and tied her hair back. Mrs. Carter showed her around. "You will do many things here," she said. "You will clean, serve customers, and help bake." Amber's first task was to clean the counters. She wiped them carefully. She wanted to do a good job. Then she helped Mrs. Carter make cookies. Amber enjoyed this part. The smell of fresh cookies made her smile. But working at the bakery was not always easy. Some days were very busy. Amber had to move quickly. She carried trays of bread, took orders, and cleaned tables. Her feet hurt at the end of the day. One Saturday, the bakery was especially busy. Many people came to buy cakes and pastries. Amber was rushing to serve everyone. The line of customers seemed endless. She ran back and forth, carrying trays of bread and boxes of pastries. The air was filled with the smell of sugar and baked goods, but Amber barely noticed. She just wanted to keep up. Then, as she turned quickly to grab another tray, she tripped. Her foot caught on the edge of a mat. She stumbled, and the tray of cupcakes she was holding flew into the air. Time seemed to slow down as the cupcakes tumbled and hit the floor with a loud splat. The bakery grew quiet. Customers turned to look at Amber. She froze, her face turning bright red. She felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice shaky. Mrs. Carter walked over. Amber braced herself for a scolding. But instead, Mrs. Carter placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, Amber," she said calmly. Her voice was kind but firm. "Mistakes happen. Clean it up and keep going." Amber nodded, her cheeks still burning with embarrassment. She grabbed a cloth and a trash bin. As she cleaned the mess, she could hear the murmurs of customers. She tried to ignore them, focusing on getting the floor spotless. When she stood up, Mrs. Carter gave her a reassuring smile. "You're doing fine," she said. "Now, take a deep breath and get back to work. Don't let one mistake ruin your day." Amber took a deep breath, just as Mrs. Carter had said. She nodded and went back to the counter. She forced herself to smile at the next customer. "How can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was steadier now. As the day went on, Amber's confidence slowly returned. She moved carefully but kept up with the busy pace. By the end of the day, she felt tired but proud. She hadn't let the accident ruin her day. That evening, Mrs. Carter spoke to her before she left. "Amber, I'm proud of you," she said. "You handled today well. Remember, it's not about never making mistakes. It's about how you handle them." Amber smiled. "Thank you, Mrs. Carter. I'll do better next time." She walked home feeling a little wiser. She realized that mistakes were not the end of the world. What mattered was learning from them and moving forward. As the weeks went by, Amber got better at her job. She learned how to work faster. She also learned how to talk to customers. Some customers were kind and patient. Others were not. Amber stayed polite to everyone, even when it was difficult. She smiled, thanked them, and did her best to make them happy. One day, Mrs. Carter called Amber into the kitchen. "I want you to decorate a cake," she said. Amber blinked in surprise. "Me? Are you sure?" Mrs. Carter smiled warmly. "Yes, I'm sure. You have been working hard. I think you're ready for this." Amber felt nervous. Decorating a cake was an important job. But she trusted Mrs. Carter. She took a deep breath and said, "I'll try my best." Mrs. Carter handed her a plain white cake. Amber looked at it for a moment. Then she carefully picked up a piping bag filled with icing. She started with small flowers, adding petals one by one. Her hands trembled a little, but she stayed focused. She added leaves, swirls, and little dots of color. The kitchen smelled sweet, and the cake began to look beautiful. When Amber finished, she stepped back to look at her work. Mrs. Carter came over. She examined the cake closely, her eyes lighting up. "You did a great job, Amber," she said. "This is beautiful." Amber's heart swelled with pride. She had done it. She couldn't stop smiling. Mrs. Carter placed the cake in the display case at the front of the bakery. "This one will sell quickly," she said with confidence. Amber began decorating more cakes after that. Each time she got better and more creative. She added new designs, roses, stars, and even little animals. Customers noticed her work. Some even asked for her by name. "Is Amber here today? I want her to decorate my cake," they would say. Amber felt proud and happy every time she heard her name. One afternoon, a little girl came into the bakery with her mother. She pointed at one of Amber's cakes in the display case. "Mommy, I want that one for my birthday," the girl said, her eyes shining with excitement. Amber's heart warmed. She smiled at the little girl and said, "I'm glad you like it. Happy birthday." The girl's mother bought the cake and thanked Amber. As they left, Amber felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Her work was making people happy. It wasn't just about baking or decorating. It was about creating moments of joy for others. Mrs. Carter noticed how much Amber had grown. One evening, as they closed the bakery, she said, "Amber, I'm proud of you. You've come so far. You've learned to work hard, stay patient, and never give up. You are a great addition to this bakery." Amber smiled. "Thank you, Mrs. Carter. I've learned so much here. I couldn't have done it without you." She walked home that night, thinking about how much she had changed. Amber realized that hard work and patience really did pay off. Her confidence had grown, and she felt ready to face any challenge. One day, a man came into the bakery. He looked important. He wore a dark suit and carried a sleek notebook. His shoes clicked softly on the floor as he approached the counter. Amber, busy arranging pastries, noticed him and smiled politely. "Are you Amber?" the man asked, his voice calm but serious. Amber paused, slightly confused. "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" The man returned her smile. "I'm from the local college," he said. "Mrs. Carter told me about you. She said you are very hard-working. I have a scholarship to offer you." Amber's eyes widened in surprise. Her heart raced. "A scholarship? For me?" she asked, almost not believing her ears. The man nodded. "Yes. It's for students who show dedication and hard work. You deserve it." Amber's hands trembled slightly. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. She looked over at Mrs. Carter, who was standing nearby, smiling warmly. "Mrs. Carter," Amber said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Did you really recommend me?" Mrs. Carter stepped forward and placed a hand on Amber's shoulder. "Of course I did," she said. "You've shown so much growth and determination. You've earned this, Amber." Tears welled up in Amber's eyes. She turned back to the man. "Thank you. Thank you so much," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. The man handed her a folder. Inside was a letter confirming the scholarship. Amber could hardly wait to share the news. She called her family as soon as her shift ended. "Mom! Dad!" she exclaimed over the phone. "I got a scholarship for college." Her mother cried happy tears. Her father's voice was full of pride. "We're so proud of you, Amber. You've worked so hard for this," they said. When Amber hung up, she turned to Mrs. Carter. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. You believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. Mrs. Carter smiled gently. You've done all the hard work, Amber. This is just the beginning of a bright future for you. Amber hugged her tightly. I'll never forget what you've done for me, she said. As Amber walked home that evening, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She thought about how far she had come, from a nervous girl starting her first job to a confident young woman with a scholarship. She knew the journey wasn't over, but she felt ready to face whatever came next. Hard work, she realized, truly did pay off. Amber continued working at the bakery until it was time to start college. Her last day at Sweet Treats was bittersweet. She arrived early, wanting to savor every moment of her final shift. The familiar smells of fresh bread and cookies filled the air. The bakery had become more than just a workplace for Amber. It felt like a second home. As the day ended, Mrs. Carter called Amber into the kitchen. Her warm smile was a mix of pride and sadness. She held out a beautifully wrapped package. "This is for you," Mrs. Carter said. Amber unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a cookbook. Its cover was simple but elegant, with the title Baking with Love written in gold letters. Amber opened the book and saw a handwritten note inside. It read, "Amber, always remember that hard work pays off. You have a bright future ahead. Love, Mrs. Carter." Tears filled Amber's eyes. She hugged Mrs. Carter tightly. "Thank you for everything," she said, her voice trembling. "I'll never forget what you've taught me." "You've earned this," Mrs. Carter replied. "I'm so proud of you, Amber. You're going to do amazing things." Amber left the bakery that evening, carrying the cookbook close to her chest. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the streets. She felt a mix of sadness and excitement. Her time at the bakery had ended, but a new chapter was about to begin. When Amber started college, she took the lessons she learned at the bakery with her. She remembered how Mrs. Carter had taught her to stay patient and positive, even when things were hard. Amber applied these lessons to her studies. She worked hard in her classes, spending late nights studying and completing assignments. She refused to give up, even when the workload felt overwhelming. To support herself, Amber got a part-time job at the college cafeteria. The work was different from the bakery, but it had its challenges. She served hundreds of students every day, managing long lines and busy rush hours. Some days were exhausting, but Amber kept smiling. She remembered Mrs. Carter's words. It's not about never making mistakes. It's about how you handle them. Amber also made new friends at college. She shared stories about her time at the bakery, telling them about Mrs. Carter's kindness and the lessons she had learned. Her friends admired her determination. "You're so hard-working, Amber," they would say. "You inspire us to do better." Amber's first job had taught her many things. It taught her to be patient, to stay positive, and to never give up. Most importantly, it taught her that hard work always pays off. These lessons stayed with her, shaping her into a confident and capable young woman. Years later, Amber's dream came true. She became a successful chef. She opened her own bakery in her hometown and named it Amber's Treats. The bakery quickly became popular, known for its warm atmosphere and delicious treats. Customers loved Amber's creativity and the care she put into every item she made. On the wall of her bakery, Amber hung a picture of Mrs. Carter and the cookbook she had given her. The photo was framed with the words, "Thank you for believing in me." Amber wanted to remind herself of where she started and the people who had helped her along the way. Every day, Amber greeted her customers with a smile. She worked hard to make her bakery the best in town. She trained her staff with the same patience and kindness that Mrs. Carter had shown her. "Hard work always pays off," she would tell them. "And don't forget to enjoy what you do." One day, a young girl came into Amber's bakery with her mother. The girl looked around in awe, her eyes wide with wonder. "Mommy, look at all the cakes," she said excitedly. Amber smiled and knelt down to talk to her. "Do you like to bake?" she asked. The girl nodded eagerly. "Yes, I want to bake like you someday." Amber's heart warmed. She gave the girl a small cookie shaped like a flower. "Here you go," she said. "Always follow your dreams. With hard work, you can do anything." As the girl and her mother left, Amber felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that her journey had come full circle. Just as Mrs. Carter had inspired her, she was now inspiring others. Her story was proof that hard work, kindness, and perseverance could create a bright future. Amber stood by the counter, looking around her bakery. The smell of fresh bread and sugar filled the air, just like it had at Sweet Treats. She thought about Mrs. Carter and all the lessons she had learned. "Thank you," she whispered softly, "for everything." Amber's Treats became more than just a bakery. It became a place of warmth and inspiration, where people came not just for desserts, but for the feeling of hope that Amber shared with every smile. And through it all, Amber never forgot the lessons she had learned. Hard work always pays off.
Thank you so much for watching today's story. We hope you enjoyed practicing your English with us. Remember, every day is a chance to improve your skills. Keep listening to English stories and learning life lessons. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell so you never miss a new story. We can't wait to see you in the next video. Keep learning, stay positive, and see you soon.